Everybody say I'm walking in dominion.
Welcome to Ask Pastor Tim with Tim Jones, Kingdom Ambassador, Spiritual Advisor, and Purpose Advocate. We're here to present wisdom, knowledge, and understanding on important topics through conversations that matter. Our goal is to answer your questions about purpose, destiny, relationships, mental and emotional wealth, human potential, and many other important subjects. We invite you to ask a question, share a thought, or suggest a topic for us to address. Follow us at Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't forget to kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Joining us tonight, we're just about to get started here, excited about tonight, and our topic for tonight, I want you to tag a friend, email a friend, phone a friend, go get a friend. If they are single ladies, single men, even married couples, we're talking about some very important parts of relationship tonight, and you want to be a part of this conversation. How we move forward in the next few years, especially in the climate that we are in, we are going to have to understand who is safe for us and who is not. We're going to have to understand what relationships we are to be in and which ones we're not. We're going to have to understand how to do the most important thing to mankind, which is be in a relationship and do relationship right. So thank you again for joining us. My daughter Jewel is here with me tonight, and she brought a topic to my attention and wanted to talk about it. So we're going to do that. Let me go ahead and invite you to like, share, and subscribe on Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Any of the Ask Pastor Tims that you missed or you want to go back and listen to them again, you can find them Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube. And again, if anything that we are saying and or doing is blessing you, is helping you, is encouraging you, is inspiring you in any way, shape, form, or fashion, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends who want answers. We come on here to get answers, to answer your questions about family, your questions about relationship, about purpose, about destiny. These are things that are important, and we want to be able to answer your questions, bring you wisdom, knowledge, and understanding the best we can with what we've learned over the past 30 years. And we believe that it can be helpful to you. So again, thank you and welcome. And hey, Joel.
Hey.
She's here.
I'm here. I'm excited about today's topic too. It was pretty organic the way that it came up, and I didn't really talk to you much about it because I wanted it to be as organic as possible on tonight's live and to really hear your feedback and your wisdom on it. So yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. All righty, let me throw this up here. I'm going to attempt to do this and stream it on Facebook at the same time. Make sure I got everything I need there. And
I can see that far.
Yeah. Okay, so it's going to go there. All right. There we have it. We are looking like we are looking, as one of my friends can say. Look at you looking like you're looking. And we hope we're looking presentable tonight. But we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to say a brief word of prayer because this topic is so important tonight. And I don't know who will come on and who will hear this or who will listen to it later. I don't know what you may be going through, what you may be dealing with, what you may be facing in terms of relationship, but I believe that something that we'll say tonight will encourage, will inspire, will help you, will shift your thinking as it concerns something to do with relationship, and will actually be a catalyst in helping you to learn how to do relationship better, maybe how to get unstuck in a relationship that you're in, or how to come to some sense of clarity about a relationship that you may be considering. So, Father, we thank you and we bless you and we praise you and we honor and adore you. You're our King, our Lord, and our God, and we look to you for all things. You are our Creator. You're the reason why we're here. And this thing, relationship, was your idea. You decided that you would create man and that you would place him here in this uninhabited place called earth, and that you would give us a special assignment to be fruitful, to multiply, subdue, and replenish the earth. And you designed it in such a way that we would be reliant on each other, that we would need others. And you placed us in a relationship with each other. You started this thing called relationship. So, Lord, you certainly know how to do it. So, Father, just pray for those that will be on and we listening and watching, and for the question that is in that person's heart, Lord, that they need an answer to. I thank you, Lord, for just showing up in a way that they're able to get their answer. We thank you and we bless you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so welcome to you on Instagram. Those of you who are watching on Facebook, I hope that that is going well. It should be streaming on Facebook. But we're going to jump into this topic. We're going to be talking about, Jill brought a subject to me about chivalry, asking me some questions about chivalry. And I began to think about not just chivalry, but to understand what chivalry is. It's an ideology, you know. And there are many ideologies when it comes to relationship. The ideology is simply your belief system, your way, the system of beliefs that you have around a subject, around a topic, about a particular thing. And ideation and ideology are two words that are similar, but the ideation really becomes the process that led to you believing whatever you believe, or thinking however it is that you think. What steps, what processes, what pathology, if you will, led you to arriving at your belief about relationships and about certain things in relationships. So we're going to talk about that, deep dive into that a little bit tonight. And I hope you have questions, and I hope you will put them in the chat, in the comment section. Let us know. Again, you can, if you don't want to comment here, you can hit us up later with any question that you may have, and we will tackle it. We will handle it. All right. I'm going to throw it over to you, Jewel, and let you go for it.
Okay. Trying to think of how to formulate the first question. Maybe backstory is just talking with a girlfriend about some expectations that we had or didn't have concerning relationship and what we would expect from guys. And I started to question where some of our expectations came from, and whether some of them were simply preferences versus things that we really should expect, and whether some of those expectations, whether it was fair to have some of those expectations just up front without any conversation. Like, if he doesn't open the door for me, if he doesn't know to do that, you know, it's just, you know, not a good thing, you know, he's not it for me. Or is that something that's communicated, like, well, that's important for me, for somebody to open the door, you know? So let's see how I formulate that into a question. I guess to start, like, are there things you think should be baseline as far as our expectations? Like, yes, he should open the door, yes, he should give up his seat if women are standing, you know, are those, or is that culture, where does that come from? Where?
And it's going to, so again, let me give you categorically how we're going to approach this. So we're going to approach it from ideologies, cultural expectations, okay, And then the third one, what's the third one? Ideology, cultural expectation, and deal breakers.
Okay.
Okay. So that's how we're going to try and break this down. So ideology. Okay. So you have to answer the question of what is someone's ideology about opening the door. Okay. How have they seen that done? Have they seen that modeled? Is that a behavior that they've seen before? Is it something that has been made important to them by someone that they trusted or saw or watched or observed or learned from? Those are important questions to be able to know whether it's something that someone should do or not. So when two people are in a relationship and something like that comes up, they have to deal with the ideology and then the cultural expectations and then whether or not it's a deal breaker. Okay, so once we answer the question, has this been modeled for you? So if it hasn't been modeled for you, it's probably not going to have a high level of importance to you unless it could. Now that in itself doesn't say that it won't, because you could be wired in a way that respect women on a level that causes you to see things like opening the door as important. You could be wired that way. Okay, but if you're not wired that way and you haven't seen it modeled, then it's not going to have a high level of importance. And even being in relationship with someone with whom it does have a high level of importance, there has to be some, there's got to be some give, there's got to be some take, there's got to be some defining, there's got to be some redefining, and there certainly has to be some understanding, before you can say, well, this is something that we are going to establish as an important tenet in our relationship.
Right.
Does that make sense? So I can say it's important because it's something that not that necessarily that I saw modeled, because my dad didn't open the door for my mom, but I opened the door for her as a child. When we would go places, I would go around and open the door for my mom. I don't know where I got that from per se, but it was in me to do that, and so consequently, any female friends that I had, I opened the door for them. So it wasn't even a question of whether or not I was going to do it, because it was already something that was an important part of who I am, an important part of my ideology, an important part of how I see things and my belief system as it concerns females and what giving them honor and respect looks like. Okay, so if you ask me that question, I would say, from my perspective, it should be done. But someone else may have a different perspective of that, and that doesn't say that they don't respect females. They may respect them in a different way. That was the way that I learned and developed how I learned how to respect and honor. One of the things. So so that question can never be answered just outright, because you got to deal with some foundational stuff before you can really answer that question and then determine if it is going to be something that you as a couple are going to make an important tenet of your relationship.
Okay. So if you have established, because you said that was something that was important to you, that you felt you needed to do to honor women. Part of the conversation that we had was I was talking to you about a realization I had about things that are important to me, based on the way that some guy friends were treating me. I noticed the differences, and they weren't inherently bad in my opinion. So, there's the guy who will open the door, always make sure, if something's heavy to carrying it, they want to sit and face, a certain direction so that they can make sure everything is good, so on and so forth. And then you have the one that really isn't paying attention to any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't think any less of the guy who wasn't really, it didn't seem to be paying attention to any of that stuff, who didn't naturally offer to do things and offer to pay and offer to. I didn't naturally think negatively. I just realized I valued and respected the type of guy who would do those things. And so, I mean, my natural response is to like question everything and, you know, look within myself to see, you know, why I value those things. And, you know, you talked about you growing up, that was something you didn't necessarily see modeled. And that's interesting to me because, you know, I feel like a lot of where I've pulled what I see as important comes from what I've seen modeled. So for people who have not seen it modeled, it's like, is that then on us as women to communicate it? Like, is it on us to not expect that, I guess? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. And so that's, you know, relationship is really about covenant. And covenant really has to do with an agreement. Now, it's stronger than just an agreement, but it's fundamentally an agreement, what we are going to agree upon. And the covenant part of it is what we are willing to do to make sure that we honor the agreement. Okay, that's really what relationship is about. So when you're talking about are certain things important, you have to define if they're important to you in the relationship that you're in. It could have been important to you prior, but in this particular relationship that you're in, it may not be as important. So you have to determine the tier of that. And determining the tier of that has to do with the kind of person you are and why you're that kind of person. Okay? If you can't tell me why, then how can you expect that thing to be as important to me as it is to you? I need to understand why you're that way or why you feel that way. You know, if the guy doesn't have the capacity, there's a word, if he doesn't have the capacity to do those things, then you have to help him develop the capacity. But that begins with a conversation, right? Probably many conversations. And the end result of those conversations has to be that, man, I like you enough or I love you enough that I want to adapt to this. I think this would be awesome. This would be dope for our relationship, right? That kind of approach to it. You know, it can't be, you know, I'm just doing it for you. And don't get me wrong, there are people that do that. I love you and I'm doing it for you. The danger in that is that not always, but many times, that has a shelf life.
Right.
Right? Because, and you don't know that it has a shelf life, and you don't know how long that shelf life is because of the unknowns of life. One of the constants in life is change. Okay? If you can't count on nothing else, you can count on change. We are going to change. Things about us are going to change. How we adapt to those changes, we don't know until we go through the change, right? And so if you're going through a particular change that just fundamentally shifts something about you, and that happens, we go through changes that fundamentally shift things in us that we never attached a real reason as to why we're that way or why we do that thing. It can fundamentally those types of things can fundamentally shift within us and can really cause us to be in a no man's land, at a crossroad with ourselves first and foremost. And if we're at a crossroad with ourselves, we will be at a crossroad in whatever relationships we're in, particularly the closest relationships we're in. We're going to be at a crossroad with those as well. So those things have to be looked at and defined. So to give a simple answer to that question, should you or is it up to you to teach somebody how to treat you? Yes, absolutely. You got to teach them how to treat you. You know, and if they don't want to, if they're not willing to learn, because it goes both ways. You know, it's not just I'm going to show you how to treat me and then you just treat me and I treat you how I want to and how I feel. No, it goes both ways. And that's a part of what being in a relationship is about, making, those kinds of sacrifices. So, yeah.
Okay, I had a question that left me.
Come back.
Because there's just a lot there. Because you talked about needing to know why something is important for you to have, and I think that's big because a couple of things. One, sometimes I think our expectations are unrealistic, or they come from like movies, or we haven't actually had the example, we haven't actually had it demonstrated, we don't know why we actually want that. We just have, I don't know where we pull it from, movies, social media, memes, I don't know. So I think sometimes our expectations are either unrealistic, or there's just no weight behind them, like you said, like why do I need that? So like for me, talking about some of the things that I shared were important had to do with my desire and I feel need to feel safe and like protected. And so those things were safe, protected, cared for. They all kind of go together for me. And so, I would always tell you, like, I never had to worry about that. Like, I always felt safe. Like, I always felt covered. And that's big for me. And so those things, those little things that I mentioned, those gestures make me feel that way, right? And that was just a light bulb moment for me. But that doesn't mean the guy who doesn't naturally do that, I'm going to immediately be like, oh, he's trash. That doesn't work for me. It is a conversation. It is communicating. It is saying this is important to me. It would be nice, if it's innate, if it's something that's already, but at the same time, I feel like you can learn, but there has to be something that it connects with about who you actually are already.
Yes.
Somebody can cause a light bulb to go off in your head that connects with something that you already are. But I had shared a little while ago that it's like, basically pay attention to how guys treat other girls, or friends, his mom. Pay attention to that, because that's how he actually feels towards women and how he actually will treat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's one presentation when they're pursuing you or when they're interested, but then if they treat everybody else different, well, that's something that doesn't line up there. And so in those cases, that's something to be like, okay, but in those cases where you can see the things that you're asking for, and he's like, oh, absolutely, it lines up with who he already is, if you know
who he is or who he wants to be.
Right? Then that's something to look at. So let me see. Because I'm just talking, there's not a question in there. So as far as things that we feel that we need, I guess part of it, would you agree, is we may find that some of those things we feel that we need, maybe we don't actually need. Maybe it is a trauma response, or maybe it's because we didn't have something growing up, or like maybe there are things that we shouldn't necessarily expect from another person.
Certainly. I think we may have talked a little bit about this before, but distinguishing and the necessity to distinguish between a need and a want. Some things we want, it don't mean we need them.
Right.
And so it's very important to distinguish those two things and identify what's a need and what is a want. And let a need be a need, okay? Because that, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, is life-sustaining, okay? A want, however, is important and may even be necessary, but not life-sustaining,
Right.
And so when I'm talking life-sustaining, I mean life-sustaining to the relationship, because we're talking in context of relationship. And so, and then that's how you get into deal breakers. Those things that are going to take life from you, those are deal breakers for sure.
That's a good definition, because...
Yeah, you got to go ahead. What you about to say?
No, I was just going to say that was big, and I was hoping you're going to go deeper into that, because what is a deal breaker? Like, or, everybody has their own, but I mean, like, what should be realistically a deal breaker? Because like I said, I feel like sometimes we have unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. it's I'm gonna use maybe a little. I'm gonna use this analogy. Okay, it's one thing to get between you and a car. It's another thing to push you in front of the car. Okay. Now that's extreme. However, let's see if we can bring that home to something more practical. So, let's see. We were talking the other day about, and the reason why I use that is because of what I'm about to say now. We were talking the other day about the friend that you were speaking of, who will get between you and the sidewalk. Won't let you walk on the outside. Interesting point, right? I grew up opening doors for my mom, but I never walked down the street with my mom, so
you didn't have that.
I didn't have that same thing, as it concerns getting between, my wife and the street, walking on the outside. So she would have to tell me that. She was like, "Can you walk on this side of me?" I'm like, "Okay, all right," and then she, the more we did that, the more we talked about that, and she explained why, and I was like, "Okay, I get it," but I didn't have the capacity for that because I didn't see it modeled. But the more she, instructed me on doing that, the more it became something that I developed more capacity for. You know what I'm saying? Now, it still may slip my mind, but the chances of it slipping my mind are slimmer than they were in the beginning, because I didn't have any capacity for it at all. But she helped to develop my capacity by instructing me. You know what I'm saying? And so now, let's talk about that. Okay, getting on this side of the road between you and the oncoming traffic or the street. Okay, so the practicality of that is that you get hit first. Something goes down, you get hit first, right? Okay, so that mindset, as opposed to a guy, right, having a real survival kind of instinct, right?
Yes.
Because I laugh about this with a friend of mine. He talked about how he and his wife were in Jamaica, I think it was, somewhere, or Bahamas, somewhere. Anyway, they were riding in cabs. And if you ever been to the Bahamas, riding in cabs in the Bahamas can be perilous, right? Anyway, and he said that the cab driver got into an accident. Somebody hit them, and the wife talks about how the husband, right, he reaches over and grabs the kids, but he didn't put an arm out in front of her. He just put his arm out in front of the kids, right? And she went flying, right? And so we talk about that, right? But the natural instincts kick in moments like that.
Right.
So those kinds of things have to be talked about, whether before that or after that, a situation like that.
Right.
Now, someone who would, and it's one thing to have that, that's just, I first thought about the kids. But it's another thing if your natural instinct is to shield yourself with the person.
Yeah.
Two different things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One is problematic.
Yeah.
The other one is not. One is definitely a potential deal breaker.
Right.
Okay. And I'm using that analogy because if you start putting that into other things, same thing. If the person will always put them, because what that is, that's a sign of someone putting themselves before you.
Right.
And someone that will put themselves before you in a relationship should be a deal breaker. It should be.
But does that go both ways?
It does. Certainly.
Because why does the man have to die first?
He doesn't. He doesn't. That's why ideology, right? And cultural expectations. Okay. Let's talk cultural expectations for a moment. Okay. When I was in high school, it was more culturally expected, or not just culturally accepted, but culturally expected for the man to do certain things. Okay. In today's culture, it is less culturally expected or sometimes even accepted.
Right.
You know, and I would love to talk about why that is. But and so what is the cultural expectation around a particular activity or a particular habit, you know, that someone will have? Is it expected culturally? Because we tend to, in this climate, tend to pay more attention to cultural expectations than we actually do things that really matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we allow cultural things to shape what we
To
want,
shape what we think.
what we think, what our expectations are, all of that, without really even knowing, like you said in the beginning, why. Why do you even want that?
Why do you even want that? And then so what culture becomes is, culture becomes your ideation. Because it becomes the path to which you develop the thinking that you have. Okay, you've seen this in culture. The influencers, the whole influencer thing, right? Listen, that's an ideation that causes people to think and believe certain ways, and many times unhealthy ways. Okay, so yeah, fundamentally, these are the kinds of things that have to be talked about and addressed. And since you went there on that, let's dive a little bit into that, the cultural expectations, and why are cultural expectations so powerful in the lives, in our lives, period, but in the lives of young people, man? Why is it so powerful? Why do you think it's so powerful?
It's just what's constantly beaten into us. It's what we see on TV. It's what we see, social media. It's what we hear in music. It's more cultural expectations are what is coming at us than, you know, obviously the biblical standard, I guess, for a relationship. So it's the fact that it's so blatant and it's so loud, and it's around us so much more than the biblical worldview. Okay.
All right. All right. It is what it is. It's what you see.
Yeah.
Right. Quincy Jones in his in the documentary on his life, which is awesome. If you haven't seen that, Q is what it's called on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. I think it still is on Netflix. But one of the things that he said when the person was interviewing him, he says, when I was 11 years old, I wanted to be a drug dealer. And the guy was like, what? You, Q, wanted to be a drug dealer? He said, yeah. He says, what you see, he said, you want to be what you see. Okay. So that leads me to this question. It's what you see, but is it what you want?
I mean, it depends on the person. I think, you know, even when you have, for example, the example that I've had in you and Mom, even when you've had the example, you know, of godly marriages around you, godly relationships, you've, you know, been in church or whatever and had the biblical perspective, even then you can get in spaces where what you see looks appealing. It looks, and that's the devil's job, that's the enemy's job. It looks like that's fun, or that's enticing, or that's successful. Well, it looks like their marriage is working. It looks like this, it looks like this, you know, and God forbid you're single and still waiting. Like, you know, it looks like they're happy and this, you know. So I think, you know, if you're not careful, subconsciously you can be taking in all of this content and taking in a lot of culture's idea of what successful relationship looks like, and you can start to think, well, maybe that's how it should be, or maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
What's crazy to me, though, is that most people know that that's not always real.
Yeah, me.
You know it's
You
not
can know.
true.
You can know and still.
That's and see that's the part that puzzles me a little. I get it. I do get it. But we have to be realistic about why we are where we are, you know. And sometimes, you know, I've been in places and I didn't understand while I was there. You know, I just didn't understand. And so that's a real thing, not understanding. But wanting to understand versus not caring about whether I understand. I just want to do what I want to do. I just want to be, you know, that's a real selfish approach. And anytime you have a selfish approach to anything, then by default, you're not someone who is safe to be in a relationship with.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so you got to be able to recognize who's safe and who's not. Right? And you can't wait until you're out on a date with someone, you know, and then it's just you and them, and then you start seeing certain things, right? You already put yourself in jeopardy. You should have been seeing some things before you went on a date with them. You should have had some kind of a way that you evaluate this person before you go to the next step. And the next step, you know, ain't getting in bed with them. The next step could simply be having another conversation with this crazy person. You know what I'm saying? And not to mention going out with them or meeting them somewhere and that kind of thing. There needs to be realistic, well-evaluated next steps in relationships. You got to have a way of seeing what's real and what's not, and seeing what's safe and what's not, and then have some kind of system in place, you know, your own thoughts, and then friends who help you, okay, to not put yourself in compromising positions. That you can't do that by yourself. You got to have a system of thinking, but you also got to have friends who think like you,
Right.
and you protect each other. Yeah, I'm about to go somewhere else, so I'm gonna give it back to you.
I mean, I want to know where you wanted to go. I mean, I think, you know, your confusion, is that the word? Your, I don't know a better word, about why why some of us get in these spaces when we know that's not what we desire, or we know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know, because it is confusing sometimes. It is confusing. I think that overall big picture, if your resolve is, you know, the biblical worldview, if your resolve is, you know, the example that you've seen, you know, at the end of the day, at the very least, you may go through the you know, the different things, but at the end of the day, you're going to come to that place like, okay, this is not actually what I want, or what I desire, or what I deserve, or whatever else, need, all of those things. You're going to come to that space. But I think, yeah, getting there, sometimes you have to filter through unmet needs. You have to filter through insecurities. You have to filter through. So the enemy also knows those unmet needs. He knows those insecurities. He knows all of those things. And so even with the things that we're bombarded with, you know, besides it being strategic from him, it's also what we tend to filter out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Based on those things. And so,
yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I talk so much about, and why I'm a purpose advocate, why I advocate for purpose so much.
Yeah.
Because when you start seeing yourself differently, you start handling yourself differently. Okay?
Yeah.
And when you start handling yourself differently, you don't allow other people to handle you any kind of way.
Right.
You don't allow other people to misuse and abuse you just because you want to be liked, or just because you want some likes. You know, you don't allow that kind of stuff to happen. You don't present yourself in a way that's contrary to what's really inside of you. Because when you being able to present outwardly who you really are inwardly, that's really what integrity is. Okay, it's being the same in here as you are on the outside. And of course, all of us are working to make sure on a daily basis, or at least we should be, that what's happening on the outside is matching what's really going on in the inside. And a lot of times that's where the problem really lies. You've got turmoil, you've got trauma, you've got confusion, you've got doubt, you've got disbelief, you've got fear going on the inside of you. And then you try and make up and pretty up and toot your mouth up, to look and present yourself a certain way on here, but what's happening on the inside is totally opposite. And that becomes a problem. It's a problem for many reasons. First and foremost, you make yourself unsafe when you do that. And the reason why I say you make yourself unsafe is because you position yourself so that your thoughts will betray you. All it needs is for you to be in the wrong situation at the wrong time with the wrong person, and that person or the enemy of your soul through that person can convince you to compromise who you really are.
Yeah.
Because your thoughts will betray you. Instead of your thoughts protecting you, you can develop your thoughts to protect you instead of betray you. So it becomes a problem when you don't deal with the trauma, the fear, all of the stuff that's going on the inside, Or if you haven't dealt with it yet, it's okay, for it to be on the, we don't have to make it up and pretty it up. It is what it is, man, until we get this thing better, or until I can, do something different. I don't have to portray something, if I'm in a bad place, I'm just in a bad place. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get out of it. I'm doing everything I can to make it better, but I'm not going to try and pretend, or I shouldn't try and pretend that everything is just rosy and peachy when it's not rosy and peachy. And a lot of times what we get on social media is the rosy peachiness.
Sure.
And it's the rosy peachiness that's causing people to believe things that are not true and to set themselves up by presenting themselves or trying to present themselves like the rosy peachy. And it's just not real. It's not reality. And man, it's troubling. No wonder the statistics on mental ill health are so high. It's because of things like that. Okay, you can't be one person on the inside and somebody else on the outside. Right. That is mental illness by definition. And we all have some degree of it. What's your next question? Because I'll keep going on that.
Let's see. I don't know. How do we have drifted? I mean, it's all good though. It's all good. Let me see. Do we have any questions?
I can't see him. It's too far from me.
Yeah, there's just so much. Even when you think about purpose, I think that it becomes clearer what is not for you, who and what is not for you when you have a sense of purpose. Even if you're in an unsure space, you know what's not for you. I don't remember if it was you who uses the example. I'm sure I've heard it from a few different people at this point, but the example of basically, when you're, let's say it's at a bank, you study counterfeits. Or you study the real thing, rather. You study the real thing, and so that when a counterfeit comes, you automatically know, because you know the real thing so well.
Yes.
It doesn't line up with, or it doesn't match, you know. So I think that same kind of idea when I think of purpose, it's like, you may be in an unsure space, but I know that's not for me. And I know that, I know I'm not falling for that, and I'm not settling for that, at the very least. Yeah. And so I think there is, just your whole mission concerning purpose, and the fact that it just seems like, in this generation and in the 20 to 40,
25 to 45,
25 to 45, that's a big thing that is lacking, and why we see a lot of the different dysfunctions that are going on. We don't know who we are. We don't know why we're here. And maybe we don't even know that that's what we're searching for.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't even know that that is the whole, and that is why, I'm accepting less, and that's why, all of those things. Maybe we don't even know that that's what we're looking for. And so until you hear somebody like you, until you hear somebody that says what they have not been able to articulate, and it's just like, oh, that's it. I think that that's a huge part of it. And so, people say marriage is pretty much the second most important decision you'll make, first being your relationship with Jesus Christ. And, it's because, we're becoming one with this person, and ultimately, that goes in line with like our purpose and what we're doing throughout this entire life. And so I think the fact that the enemy can get us in that area is huge. I think it's really big. And I think I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you were saying about your thoughts being able to guard you rather than betray you, and what that kind of looks like. I know that's like, again, something that's right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So, every day, we talked last time about words and the connections that they have, the connections that certain words represent for us. Okay. And so we have to understand a couple of things. First and foremost is that our what I call word banks, okay? Your word bank is basically holding and words that describe who you are, how you feel, how you see things. It's describing, okay, your soul and everything that's going on and happening with your soul, okay? There are things happening with your soul that you don't have words for yet. But when you get words for it, it goes into your word bank, right? So your word bank and your thoughts connected, right? So when your word bank or your thoughts are full of words that are fear-based, doubt-based, uncertainty-based, confusion-based, then your vocabulary, your conversation is always going to be based on those things. You're always going to see the negative side of things. You have some people who say, well, this person always sees the positive side of something. Or somebody else, they always see the negative side of something. That's because of their word bank. Okay? And their word bank, again, is consistent of words and thoughts that support, that describe who they are. So when you don't know who you are, then by default, your word bank is full of doubt. Okay? So your conversations, your best conversations, are undergirded with who you really think you are. And if you don't know, then they're undergirded with doubt. Okay? That is a recipe for your thoughts betraying you. Because even, for instance, right? Let's say, beginning of the year, everybody goes on a diet, right? You set in your mind, I'm going to do this, for this amount of time, okay? And you're not saying that so that you can only do it for this amount of time. You're really wanting to change something in yourself. You're really wanting to change some behavior. That's what's at the crux of it. Even if you don't say that, that's why you're doing it. Okay? You don't just want to do it for a few weeks. Even though in the back of your mind, you're probably just going to do it for a few weeks, and then you're going to go back to your old behavior, right? I mean, these are thoughts, okay? They're thoughts. Those thoughts are sitting there waiting for an opportunity to come to the front of your mind, right? So you're fasting, right? And you hit a real, the first 2 days you fast or whatever, it's like, man, this is awesome, man. And you're praying, and you're not even thinking about food. But then the third day happens, right? And then, you wake up with food on your mind, right? So here comes those thoughts. They're waiting. Now is an opportune time. They come to the front of your mind. And so now you start thinking of every reason why, you're not going to be able to make it, right? That's what I mean. Now, imagine filling your bank with thoughts that say, you can do it. That say, when times get rough, you get tough. You know, filling your mind with things that says, you know, I'm thinking about this particular scripture, Proverbs 24:10. In the day of adversity, if your strength fails, or if your faith fails, it's because your strength was small. Right? What if you fill your mind with things that says, my faith is strong, my strength is strong, I am confident. You know, and a lot of people look at that, well, those are just positive confessions. Don't sleep on confessions. Okay? Because they're more than just confessions. Words describe who you are. So when you start saying certain words to yourself, you are now helping yourself to come into alignment with a person you want to be. Not a person you're not that person yet, but you want that's who you really believe that you are and you want to be. So you need to begin to develop the words that are going to support that. And the more of those words, remember, words are thoughts and thoughts are words. So the more of those words, thoughts that you put in there, okay, the greater the chance that your thoughts will support you when you need it the most, instead of betray you when you need them the most. Does that make sense? You know, I was trying to make that as simple as I could make it, because it really is that simple. Right? The scriptures say, Proverbs 18:21. Some of y'all know it, right? Life and death is in the power of the tongue.
I can't see that far. I'm listening.
Life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? And those who love it, they eat from it. The fruit of it. You know. So that's a real thing. That is a real thing. I'm writing a book and developing a program around that, creating mental wealth, and wealth being words that empower and lead to health. Okay? Because it's a real thing. But did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. I can't get on there. I was trying to. I guess I can't get on my own. I was trying to see what. Cousin Ladon. And the purpose can only be found by focusing on Jesus, His Word, and His perspective on everything. Yes. I cannot see your phone for nothing.
I'm not going to even try because it's too far away.
You have to interact with the people. Yeah, I know, but I mean, this is really good. I think there's a lot of different directions that we could go with it as well. Honestly, I just wish more people could pull and ask, I guess, the questions. So I mean, that's why I was looking as well. You know, I just think there's a lot of on social media, you can say whatever you want and put it on a white background, and now it's true because you posted it as a meme, I guess. You know, it's like, just where did you even get that from? Type of stuff. But people are taking it in as truth, or, you know, that makes a little bit of sense, or whatever it is, you know. And so, like I said, between that and music and Hollywood and all of those things, you know, if you don't have that anchor, and then if you didn't have the correct example either, then those are things that you grab onto, and those are things that you strive to either be like or, you know, desire for yourself. And so, you know, the original idea, I guess, behind my questions to you had a lot to do with why we should expect certain things from God. Should we? And then why should we? Should they be communicated, or should they be expected? You know, and I guess one thing that I wanted to do here was see what the biblical perspective on that was, you know.
Yeah. And so,
I don't know if I asked that right, but
no, I got you. I totally got you. I'm trying to see how I want to, because I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I want to stay right here in this spot, because that's where I want it to be also. is right here in this spot right here. The Bible is full of information. It's full of knowledge. It's full of wisdom. It's full of potential understanding. Okay, that's why it's a source, because it has the ability to give us the things that we need. It has the ability to help us to answer the questions that we have. It has the ability to help us to find ourselves, to discover who we are. And the Bible talks a lot about who we are. Okay, and so being able to find a how can I say this? To find a source of information that you're going to pull from that supports you. Okay, the Bible is that. The Bible is the source of information about human beings that we can pull from to help, to encourage, to inspire, to build up, to uplift who we are. So that's number one. Number two is this: if you develop a sense of who you are and the value and importance around who you are, okay, you have to be the first champion of who you are. Okay, you can't expect others to champion who you are more or even better than you. You've got to be your number one cheerleader. You've got to be your number one supporter. So that means that you have to develop the fortitude, the intestinal fortitude, to not yield to cultural expectations, cultural cues about anything. If you look to culture to define anything for you, you are going to be confused. You are going to be full of fear. You are going to be full of doubt, because culture is not supposed to tell you who you are. Can I say that again? I want to look up. I got 3 cameras. I'm looking all of them and say it. Culture should not be telling you who you are. That's why so many of you don't know who you are. It's because you're listening to culture. Culture did not create you. And so that's why so many of us make the decisions that we make and make the mistakes that we make, because we get our cues, our source of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding is at the wrong source. Culture is not your source. Yeah, I know the influencers, right? But how many of you know that you can have a good influence and you can also have a bad influence? Can I suggest to you that many of us have been taking our cues from bad influences? And then so that puts us in a place, Jewel, where even though you know you want better, even though you know that in order to get better, you're going to have to hold to a standard, but yet the culture is pulling at you, constantly pulling at you to do this like that, say this like that, carry yourself like this, act like that, take this kind of photo, do this video, like this, love that, hate that. Culture, man. We have to fight against cultural cues. And if I can't say anything else, if you don't hear anything else I say tonight, develop the intestinal fortitude to not follow everything you see on social media, not believe everything you see, and not be pulled into describing, defining, presenting yourself in a way that does not reflect who you really are. And if you don't know who you really are, hit me up. I will help you to discover who you really are. And I guarantee you, you will be surprised. It will blow your mind when you understand and realize the power that's lying on the inside of you. When you realize the value you really had. I don't care what they said. I don't care what they did. They lied to you. If they didn't tell you who you are, if they didn't encourage you and support you and build you up, they lied to you. You can't start lying to yourself. And if you do start lying to yourself, stop. Stop lying to yourself. Find truth. Well, what is truth? I don't know what truth that hit me up. I'll help you discover it. I'll help you find it. And I'm not talking about brainwashing you. No, I will help you to see what's been in your life all along. Because truth has never been far. Scriptures say wisdom is crying out in the streets. So it's never been far. It's always been there. But we have looked at the wrong things and have allowed culture to shape our appetites, to shape what we feel, to shape how we see things.
Yes.
And that has damaged relationships. Damaged it. So some of these things, some of the questions that you're asking, man, the answer doesn't matter. And the reason why the answer doesn't matter is because until that dependency on other people to define who you are is broken, it won't matter. It won't matter. You'll continue to take cues from the wrong place. You know, at some point, you've got to be a seeker of truth, of what truth really is. And that truth begins with understanding who you are and why you're here in the earth, what it is you're carrying. It's bigger than you. And whoever you're going to connect with, whoever it is that you're going to be in relationship with, whoever it is that you're going to consider as a life partner, man, they had better be someone who can help support and encourage and build you to become who it is you're supposed to be, and vice versa. That's a deal breaker. But see, here's the thing: if you don't recognize the fact that this person is bad for you and not good for you, that's a problem. That's a real big problem. So we can talk about deal breakers, but we probably need to talk first about being able to recognize a deal breaker. And then having the fortitude, the intestinal fortitude to not yield to what you feel, man, in the moment. Yeah. And do we all need help in that? Of course we all need help. We all need help. We have to help each other, but we got to tell each other the truth. We got to be truthful. We got to be honest about it. And we got to say, you know, we got to say, be honest about what we really are in order to break these dependencies. I feel that relationship, I'm so glad I'm not, you know, I don't have to find a wife in this climate. I'm glad. I'm so glad. I am. I'm glad because things are so different. And it's not just that they're different, but they're different and they have moved away from, so far away from the lines that you can't even see the lines anymore. And there always has to be lines. There always has to be lines. There are guidelines in life. You cannot live life without guidelines. Can I say that again? You cannot live life without guidelines. There are always guidelines. I know you don't want nobody to tell you what to do. I know you want to do your own thing, but there are always guidelines. You didn't come into this earth by yourself. You didn't make yourself. You didn't raise yourself. I know some of y'all say, I did. I was in the streets and I was here and I was there. My mama left, my daddy left, and I had to raise myself. I get it. I get it.
Terrence, what's your question? Is that really Terrence today? He said he had a question. I'm looking at the time because as you're talking, I'm taking it all in because this is a real conversation that I wanted to have for you and hear my dad's advice. I feel like a lot of people need to hear it, like I said, and I think it's a conversation that can continue, that should continue. I told you, you know, I really want to do this live and have an audience and have people be able to ask questions. I just think it's an area that we're failing at in many ways. I think it's an area where the church looks just like the world when we're talking about relationships. We're talking about that kind of losing yourself and not knowing your purpose as it concerns relationships and not making those right decisions concerning who we date and who we link up with and who we ultimately marry and all of those things. You know, the fact that divorce rates are pretty much the same, and there's so many directions that we can go with it, you know. But I think that you know, starting with those very initial things, you know, in some spaces, in some ways, it seems like it's been said that we don't see much in the Bible about dating, and like, so we don't really know how to, and we're kind of making it up as we go. You know, it kind of goes, it was arranged marriages and it was straight to marriage. And so in many ways, I think sometimes we see these gray areas, you know, even though there are things that you can pull and apply to dating, I feel. But yeah, I think that it's just a conversation that can really keep going. It's a conversation that is necessary. But like I said, I'm looking at the time too and trying to be mindful of that too. I asked it on the thread.
Okay.
He said, "Did you really call me Terrence?" Yes, Terrence.
Do this.
What are practical ways? Sorry, go ahead, Daddy. Okay.
If you would like for us to continue this conversation, just put it in the chat. Please continue this conversation. We will continue this conversation, but we want to know that you want to hear it and that you have questions that you want to get answered. That's number one. Number two, three things. I'm going to give you 3 words. Okay, I'll give you 2 because I can't think of the other one. But betrothal, engagement. I don't know why I can't think of the third one. It's a third one. Can't think of the third one. But these are words used in the Bible to describe the marriage process. Okay.
Betrothal.
Betrothal. Betrothal. Okay. I will, if you guys want me to, I will come back and talk about the marriage process. Okay. That there is some guideline in the Bible. It's just not, you know, the word dating doesn't appear in the Bible, but trust me, there is a purpose and a reason for every stage that we go through. Okay. And so the Bible describes it. It describes the marriage process. And when you look at what those things are, then you're able to see, okay, wow. And then that can help you understand what dating should be. Okay. What it should be. Would you guys like for me to talk about that? The marriage process from a biblical standpoint of how to develop how to be in relationship, how to pursue someone, how to actually be moving in a direction that's a positive direction, moving towards marriage, the marriage process. What does that look like from a biblical perspective? Would you guys like for me to address that? And it won't take long for me to address it. It's real simple. It really is. But it's just, we use different words. But one of the things about the Bible is you have to be able to take things in context, and you have to be able to study and search out the words that were used in that time, and not just get a definition for it. You got to search it, and then you got to follow references so you can get a framework for their ideology. See, it's one thing to just read the Bible and just try and take it literally. Okay, you can do that. But you'll go a whole lot further if you seek to understand the ideology, because people in the Bible were just like us. Okay? They had different circumstances, different situations, different time, but they were just like us. And so if we have ideologies, so do they. And so if you understand that the Bible is going to be written out of an ideology, well, it's God's ideology. It's God's ideas and man's ideology about God's ideas. I'm going to say that again. It's God's ideas and man's ideology about God's ideas. Okay, because man had to take God's ideas and formulate them, put them in some kind of words, put them into something that can communicate to other men. And man couldn't do that without going through his own ideology. The only person that could do that was Jesus, right? And that's because he came straight from God. He was God here in the earth. He was the idea. He was the ideology. Okay? And so we'll talk about that. I don't want to go too much farther into that, but I'm here to tell you that there is help and there is understanding, okay? And there is wisdom and there is knowledge that you can gain so that you don't make crucial, pivotal, life-changing mistakes when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
All right? That's all I got to say about that right now.
Yes, I know you can't see, but people said they want the conversation to continue.
We will continue.
People, so.
All right, so thank you guys for jumping on. Hey, we're going to go through and see any questions, and we'll answer those questions directly. I'll shoot you up a messenger or whatever the case is, but we will continue this. In 2 weeks, we'll continue it unless we decide that we want to do a special thing between now and then. Mm-hmm. And that may happen,
yeah.
but we will address it, okay? All right, thank you guys. Listen. I want to invite you, like, share, and subscribe. Go to Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube and like, share, subscribe, watch the videos there. Any of the Ask Pastor Tims that you may have missed that you want to go back and listen to again, re-audit, they're there for you to be able to do that. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. We will sign off like we always do. Encouraging you to live full so that you can die empty. You want to make sure that you finish when you're finished. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you again. We'll see you again soon.